Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Mike.
Ashley, if you would just go over some meeting guidelines, if anybody gets locked up or anything.
Yeah, so if you freeze up, which tends to happen with this format, just take yourself out. You can hit leave meeting if it will let you. Otherwise, it will eventually just kick you out because you most likely just don't have internet. And then just go ahead and rejoin the meeting. I will admit you, and it looks like Emily is joining us right now.
Yay.
And then we'll just let you back in. Okay. So
I froze up and rebooted, so I hope it doesn't happen.
Okay. Hi, Emily.
Hi,
She's
Emily.
Connecting.
And also kind of a housekeeping thing for board members that aren't a member of the finance committee and are here as guests. Are we supposed to refrain from participating in the discussion?
No, you can participate. This meeting was properly noticed. Notification went out, and it is a public meeting. We are live streaming, so it's open.
Okay.
So we are in compliance with all the requirements.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Jim, if it's possible, you're totally in the dark, so you just look like a shadow. I don't know if you have a light you can turn on or if you can move. There you go. That's
Like ominous.
My office window is.
Or if you can move your laptop so your face is facing the window. And Mary Kay pointed out, we do have some new participants in the meeting, and some of us know each other and some of us don't. So why don't we just really quickly start with the community members who are part of this committee, and if you'll just do a quick introduction, that would be great.
Sure. Well, Bob Perkins. I attended one meeting when we were still doing face-to-face, and now here for the Zoom. I'm a financial advisor. Lived in Chagrin Falls since 2001. I've got 3 kids in the Chagrin schools. I've got a background in corporate finance, worked at KeyBank and McDonald Company back in the day.
Great.
Thanks, Bob. I'm glad to meet you. I wasn't at the meeting that you were at, so.
Nice to meet you too.
Well, we go to Jim next.
Jim Gutty. Happy to be part of the committee. I guess this is my second meeting. I have 4 kids in the school district, so I definitely get my money's worth. Actually, next year will be 3. So appreciate everybody's hard work. And I work at a private equity firm in Pepper Pike. And before that, I started my career at Ernst & Young. So I do have a finance background, and I'm an happily inactive CPA in the state of Ohio.
Jim, you're also on our audit committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And John?
Well, I'm a recovering CPA myself, Jim. So and I've served on 3 levy committees, and we have 2 granddaughters in the school system. So it means a lot to us.
And Nick?
Hi, I'm Nick Turchin. I have 2 kids in the school system right now. 18 years of accounting and finance, also starting at Ernst & Young, but more recently, more of a small to mid-sized business CFO role is what I've been doing the last few years.
And Emily?
I am a compliance attorney, and I work in compliance for financial services. I also worked at KeyBank as a compliance auditor. I do mostly regulatory compliance, but I also do all kinds of finance compliance. I have 3 kids, 2 of them who are already in the school system. I guess all of them are, because we got the new kindergarten sign in our front yard, which is very exciting. So we're very invested in the community. And as you can probably tell, I'm also doing dual community duty tonight. I'll be going to our scout meeting right afterwards. So we're heavily involved in not only the Chagrin schools, but also the Chagrin community in general. So, yeah. And my girls are I have twin girls, and they're in 2nd grade. They're going into 2nd grade.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. We really appreciate the time that you give as volunteers to this committee. It really helps us strengthen our decision making. You often bring questions that we might not have thought of, and certainly expertise that adds a ton of value. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our CFO Treasurer, Ashley Brudno, and let you walk us through the agenda.
Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is approve minutes for May 13th. That was our last meeting. I did attach those to the calendar, so hopefully everybody got a chance to glance at them. And let me know if there's anything that I missed or misrepresented, or if you got any typos.
The very last sentence says adjourned at 6 p.m. and we started at 6 p.m. So I forget whether we adjourned at 7 or 7:30. But
That was in my own handwriting, so I will have to look at that. I can't even blame anybody on that one. Okay, I will look at that. Probably exactly 7 then.
Yeah, I think it was like closer to 7:30.
Oh, okay. I will look at that.
I didn't have any changes. I thought it looked great. So if there are no objections, we can move forward with approving the minutes.
Yeah, we would need a motion to approve as amended with the corrected times.
so moved.
I'll second. Okay. Was that you, Bob?
Who seconded? Okay.
Jim.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'm going to say that was a no opposed, correct?
No opposed.
Okay. Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is to update everybody on the state funding situation. Last time we met, it was right after we were informed by the state that they were pulling money back from us. At that time, they were taking $533,000 from our foundation funding. That was more, we had already received more than our adjusted allocation, so we were going to be sending a check back to the state, which obviously we were not happy about, and really completely changed our financial situation, changed the discussion on the levy scenarios, and the guidance at the time was, kind of shaky. Some people were saying expect the same level of cuts going forward for your 5-year forecast. Mind you, this is in the middle of May, and the 5-year forecast has to be approved and submitted to the state by the end of May. Others were saying don't change your future years, change your years an additional 20% going forward. So we were kind of all over the board. What I did for the forecast was keep the cut in there and maintain the same level of state funding going forward for the forecast that was approved by the board and what was submitted to the state. Since then, we have received word that House Bill 164 was approved. And what that did was, they heard from districts like us, they heard from us and several other districts like us, what that cut did to us. And it was, at the end of the year, we were almost through the whole year, and they were taking 30% of our funding. It really inhibited our ability to plan. The money had already been spent, obviously. You can't change your budget when the year is over. So they took everybody's foundation funding, did some calculations, and capped the loss at 6% of our foundation funding. So we were losing 30%, and that changed to 6%. So within that, we're also getting the CARES funding relief money from the federal government. So they took that into consideration, because the argument was from several of the districts was a district like us, we lost $534,000. And their argument was, well, yeah, but you got this CARES funding from the federal government. Well, we got $44,000. There were other districts who received CARES funding significantly in excess of their cut from the state. So districts like us received huge cuts where other districts received huge windfalls. So they decided to take that CARES funding into consideration and include that in their calculations so that your net is a loss of no greater than 6%. So what that means for us is we got $388,554 back out of that loss. So that was wonderful. Really changed our year-end balance for this year. But going forward, the fiscal year starts tomorrow, and I don't know what our funding is for next year. So we're still kind of all, kind of hanging here and waiting to see what's going to happen. Everything I've heard up to this point is consider the cut that you received this year and expect similar levels of funding going forward. So I have updated my forecast. That's what I provided to you on the calendar, and we'll go through that in a few minutes. And I put, obviously the 388,000 back in that we got for this year, but I left the future years alone. So I left the cut at the $534,000. I did not touch that because we really don't know what's going to happen. So are there any questions about the state funding or how they did that or how it affects us? I know it's really confusing because there was a state cut, then there was the federal money coming in. Now they're netting those amounts to come to a different loss, and it's been fun to post, let me tell you.
The only thing I would add, Ashley, is to give Senator Dolan,
yes,
in our community, he basically put that on his back and carried it all the way through. And
yes.
So if you have any connection to him, he's one to thank for that.
We are extremely appreciative, as are many other districts throughout the state.
And so this is Phil. So that did make it across the governor's desk. He did sign it?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so what's the net effect to us? Maybe you said it and I didn't catch it.
So the net effect that we're getting back is 388.
It sounds like we lose a net 146.
Yes. Our net loss is 146. When you consider the CARES funding, it's, we're getting $44,000 according to their numbers. 4 of that is allocated to St. Joan of Arc. So really we're getting 40. So really the net effect is, 106. And we did get the difference payment that is in our bank account, and it's done. So to answer your question, Phil, it is done, and he signed it, and we already got the money back.
Well, overall, that's good news, right?
Great news. It's fantastic news for this year. I don't want to misrepresent it. It's, it doesn't affect anything going forward, but for this year, it's wonderful news. When you go from a loss of 534 to just over 100 grand. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I would characterize this as not horrible.
Right.
Because they still took money back. So it's
they still did horrible. Cut our funding, yes.
I wouldn't say it's wonderful.
At the 9th hour, no less. So losing 100,000 is not great, but it's better than losing over 500. So
yes, we were happy that it got signed.
So Ashley, other than that, is there any change in your forecast from what we discussed at the last meeting?
No other changes, except I did put into what I provided to you. Do you want to just skip to that? I can. Sure. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah, okay. So when we talked about these scenarios and we talked about levy, one of the things that we were including in there were cost reduction measures. So what I did in this forecast, can you see when I'm moving my cursor? Can you see where I'm pointing? Okay. So I added this line here just to kind of show what the expenditures were going to be rather than going through and figuring out, each of these lines and going through and kind of redoing the entire forecast. I just took the the lump sum of the $600,000 out of the expenditures to show our cost reduction measures that we're committing to. In order to get a 3.85 mil levy to go 3 years, we have to cut an additional $600,000 out of our budget. The board is committed to doing that. We're working on all of that. So that's just how that's reflected in here. I wanted you to be able to see that. And then down here at the bottom is where you'll see the new revenue from a levy. So this is estimated revenue, assuming that a levy were to pass. So I didn't want to put in that the millage is there. If it passes, the revenue obviously will come up here into this general property tax line. But when it hasn't passed yet and it's an estimate and you're hoping for it to, you put it down here in this extra little line so that you can see that money separately. So those are the only changes from what was discussed at the last meeting and from what the board approved as the 5-year forecast that was submitted to the state. At this point, I'm not resubmitting. There's no need. You have to submit it in May. It is an estimate. We will resubmit in November when we start over again. But at the end of June, to resubmit it to the state is kind of silly. So we're not going to do that. Bless you. So are there any questions about the forecast? I don't know if everybody's got a chance. I did attach it, but I didn't get to it as early as I would have hoped. So, which
and
by the way,
you said it's 3.85 is what you modeled in, right? That was what was approved.
Yes. That's what's modeled in. That's what the board has discussed. We have not passed the resolutions yet, but that is the current plan.
So thanks for clarifying that. So the board reached a level of consensus at our last meeting, and you may know we actually, based on Bob's advice, we brought in Anthony Bosacek to talk about the political climate, and he gave a presentation which was very nice. In fact, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I would encourage you to do so. And then the board had a discussion about the pros and cons of timing and millage amount. And I would summarize the discussion that the board really wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to message a no tax increase this fall instead of waiting until the spring and kind of making that a little bit more difficult of a message to deliver. So we also decided to wait until the last possible moment to take action to put that on the ballot, which actually is coming up pretty quickly here. I think the first meeting in July, we'll be passing our first resolution to place a levy on the fall ballot. We had committed to all of you that we would come back to this committee one more time before the board moved forward formally. So it's a nice opportunity to help you understand. We've got most of the board on this call, some of the thinking, and also for you to challenge and ask questions or put forward any considerations that you have before we move forward.
So in light of this, do we have a projected next step as far as, are we talking about going back in another 2 years? Do we want to even talk about that at this point? Or is that sort of limits discussion at this point because there's so many unknowns? What are you guys thinking?
Well, Ashley, you want to answer that?
I can if you want me to. You're the board. You can speak for the board. I was asked to come up with a number that would get us 3 years, Emily.
Okay.
So that's why you see that $600,000 in cost reduction measures there. We really don't want to go back to the voters in only 2 years. If we cut these expenditures by this amount, including the 350 that we've already cut, we think we can get 3 years.
And where are could you kind of like highlight for us the major areas of cuts?
Yes, I believe that we had that document the last time. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I could share it with you if I can find it.
And
I
Ashley,
pulled
just
on
to
a
be clear,
laptop and
Ashley, the 600,000 is not the gross amount of cuts. That's additional cuts on top of what you had already modeled, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's in addition to the 350 that we kind of worked through all year before COVID hit us. And before, you know, the economy changed. We had already cut 350, and that was our sort of our own financial goal for the year. And then once COVID-19 came and, you know, changed the landscape and changed our world, and the economy declined, that's, you know, when we decided, look, we can't do what we want to do. It's not a responsible ask of the community at this point in time, given the environment that we're in. Then that's when we decided, okay, if we can't increase our revenue with that high of a millage, then, you know, the only other option is to cut cost. So we went through a pretty extensive review of expenditures and came up with several areas where we're reducing costs as much as possible.
While Ashley was looking for that document, I can just tell Emily, some of the things I can remember is generally we did not replace retiring staff members. So we're down a retiring or people that moved on. Like we had a math teacher resign because her spouse is moving out of state. We are absorbing that position.
Yes.
Teachers will teach 6 periods instead, and you know we have to pay them for the 6th period, but that's a body there. I believe science, we had a middle school science retirement. We're not replacing that. We had a large kindergarten class, but rather than making, we have to make an extra section there, but second grade, the class sizes will be bigger in second grade. We're moving a second grade teacher down to kindergarten rather than hiring another teacher, things like that.
Right. We're also putting off some capital projects that we had planned. We're putting those off, which then that doesn't come out of the general fund, but the general fund does transfer money to the PI to cover those capital projects. So we're putting off projects, and I mean, understanding that those still will eventually need to get done. It's just we're kind of kicking the can down the road on some of those. Things like an additional bus purchase that we wanted to make. I'm looking at another spreadsheet over here on another screen. Sorry, I've got 3 screens in front of me. An indoor lighting project. We had a van purchase planned. Reduce the scope of an electrical feeder system. So several projects that we're kind of just putting those off.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one just quick question behind your build of the forecast and line items like personnel services, you know, going out 5 years? What's like the support behind that? Is that tied directly to by people and contractual increases? Is there just some sort of blanket?
Yeah. So
percentage you apply?
A little of both. If you'd like to see the model, I would love to share it with you because I do get excited about my nerdy spreadsheets and nobody else does. So if you want to come and look at it, that'd be great. What it does is it takes groups of employees, takes an average salary. So, you know, our average teacher salary is X. We have this many teachers, and then it increases. Now, obviously, I have to make some adjustments as years go on because we do get a little off. But and then it also takes into consideration, I can model, you know, normally we have 3 teachers leave and I can remove higher salary teachers and I'm going to replace those with 3 lower salary teachers. So it takes that into consideration as well, because that's just kind of typical that happens in a normal year. So we can estimate those. So it's not just a blanket. I don't just take the total line and, you know, add 2%. But it does take groups of people, and then I can add the 2%. For groups like teachers, I add a percentage for step increases. That's a separate line. It calculates that separately. Okay. So it doesn't, I use the model, and then I'll take the total and look at The list of employees that we do have, it's never exact because our classified people are not on salary. So things like overtime, those kind of fluctuate quite a bit. Aid hours change as student situations change and things like that. So yes, it's a percentage, but it's not just on the total line. It's on groups of employees.
That makes sense. But I'll probably I might take you up on that offer.
Okay.
To review that.
And Ashley, it's linked
Really
directly to the union contract terms. So
Yeah,
if there are
so
step increases or as you know, Nick, we've negotiated out a couple years into the future what the raises are going to be, and there are guaranteed step increases based on tenure or on your degree attainment.
yeah.
Those are all built in as well.
Yep.
Just circling back to the cost savings, there are two that we didn't talk about that I think might generate some conversation in the community.
Okay.
So it'd be good for this committee to understand. One is the PE waiver. And so that is the state of Ohio allows school boards to adopt a waiver for the physical education requirement in high school. And in place of taking that class, the students would have to complete 2 seasons of a sport, of an extracurricular athletic. So we're looking at adopting that could reduce some staffing that's needed in the physical education department and result in some cost savings. And it's something we've been looking at anyway, because, several, every year we hear from parents that this is something that they'd like to see us do. It allows more flexibility for students who have really crowded schedules at the high school. So we're looking at that. And then the other thing is the pay to participate, which would ask of our families, or I think I heard at our last policy meeting the term copay, which I really like, because we're just saying if you have a little skin in the game, it helps the district support the breadth and variety of extracurricular activities that we're paying coaches stipends for and other equipment and facilities. So we're looking at implementing that. And those are both things that have just gone through policy, and they'll be coming to the board. I believe at the next meeting, we'll be hearing a recommendation from the administration on what those would look like. So obviously pay to participate brings in a little bit of revenue. It just helps offset some of our costs for athletics, obviously just the tip of the iceberg compared to what we invest in those, but it does help a little bit and generates a little revenue for the district. Did anybody else on the board want to add to my summary?
I just want to say, be careful with the PE waiver. There won't be savings until down the road. There will be no savings this year because the waiver doesn't. Once we have to have the resolution in place before we can even do it. So anyone who, is a senior or junior now, the sports they already took do not count. It has to be things going forward. And I don't know that we can even have sports this year. And we have our teachers under contract from this year. We're not going to say, oh, everyone's dropping phys ed and we're getting rid of the teachers, so that is not going to happen until future years. So it's anticipated future savings.
Any other questions on the cost reduction?
No, it seems like a pretty big number, but I guess I didn't get the benefit of the political consultant. I think I was pretty vocal on the last call. I probably would have done more for a levy, but I understand I'm obviously not on the board, so I don't get a vote. But I think with the uncertainty around the state funding, it's not going to go up over the next 3 to 4 years. And I think it's a pretty big cost reduction target to hit. So it's going to be felt, and people are going to pass a levy and then feel, these cost reductions in terms of what they're getting. And so I think it's going to be close, whether we have to go back, before 3 years.
Yeah, one thing, you know, that I think we've really conservatively estimated the savings that we can get from switching to a self-insured model on our health insurance. And again, you know, there's some risk there. So we don't want to say, yes, we're going to get this and then not get it. But I think we've been really conservative on our estimate there. So I think we'll probably hit that number pretty easily if things continue with our insurance the way they have. Now, obviously, if something changes, you know, there's some really bad year or something, then and we have a lot of claims to pay, and now we're self-insured and we're paying those claims out of our own fund. You know, there's some risk there, but I think that the plan that we have for moving to self-insurance mitigates that risk. The way you move into it is, you know, your claims, we would move into it in January. Claims that are coming in January, February, March are really from October, November, December. So those are still going to be paid under the fully insured plan. So for a couple months, we're going to be sitting there not really paying out claims. And that's where we start building up our balance in our self-insurance fund. Then once claims start coming in, we'll have some money to pay those claims.
So Jim, and I appreciate your input on this. Most of us were in the last meeting, were able to hear your perspective, and you're not the only one that's shared that. I would share with you that as a board, we felt that this list of cuts could be absorbed without significantly affecting students or the educational experience. We were kind of getting close to a precipice there, and we definitely had board members that said, we go any further, we're starting to get to where we should just raise the millage amount, you know, on the levy. But the majority felt that this was palatable to the degree that, you know, making cuts can be palatable. And then that would speak to why not raising the millage in the fall. You know, we felt like we could absorb these cuts. It's a clearer message when it's already going to be a kind of muddied political environment to say your taxes won't go up if you vote yes on this. And it's a straight 1-for-1 substitution for the mills that are falling off. As far as waiting till the spring, which I think is something else you had proposed, we still have to make cuts. They're very similar in amount. They're a little bit less, but they're similar in amount. Even if we went out for like a 7.9 mil levy. So the reality is we're facing these cuts unless we decided to go out in the fall for a 7.9, which I think we talked about at length in this committee, and the board has certainly talked about. It doesn't feel like that's something we can get support around given the economic circumstances.
Well, the spring, I guess I didn't realize when I made the initial comment, the spring is tough because you have a roll off. So you have a gap, right? And so I guess I didn't appreciate that before, but no, I get it.
Yeah,
The
so
messaging
taxes would actually go down for a year, and then just to wait a few months because it's in a new calendar year, we would lose one whole year of collection on that.
Right.
So. Yeah, I don't want to characterize it as these cuts are easy. They're certainly not. And it's certainly it's something that we all take very seriously, and it's going to take some work, and it's not going to be easy for the staff, to implement all of these. But I'm confident that we can do it. I don't think it's a lofty goal that we're not going to hit that number.
Ashley, is the 388,000 that was restored been publicly disclosed?
What do you mean? I mean, I haven't put anything out, but it is certainly public information.
Well, I haven't seen it, for example, in the Chagrin Valley Times or anywhere else.
You probably will now.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like
hasn't hit the Village Block Club yet.
right? The bill is I'm an admin there, so if you need anything on there, off there, let me know. But no,
I know they reported on Dolan's amendment. Governor just signed off. So I don't know that they've reported that's official, but I know they've reported that he was working on this reduction. Certainly we're going to put it out, district wide in our, our publications that are coming out, not only internally, for our parents, but we're working on a publication that would come out in August for all of our community, and that would definitely be included.
and it looks like this is House Bill 164, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it did, it hit that it passed the Senate 3 weeks ago, so I think it's probably just the ramifications are just trickling through, and yeah.
I do agree with Catherine, and we discussed this in our May meeting as well, that to allow the 3.85 to just expire is a lost opportunity, because it does soften the blow of raising 3.85 for operating by being able to say, as Catherine has said, this will not increase your taxes. So that's just too irresistible to news on House Bill 164. The cuts, I know, are never fun, but it certainly shows the community that we have responded to the economic environment. So I think all of that puts us in a pretty good position to sell a levy of 3.85 mils.
Because I think there'll be plenty of people that'll say, isn't this the money that was rolling off from the intermediate school rebuild? And they're like, so this is not like just an extension of an existing thing. That was a one-time thing, and now you're rolling it on. So there'll be people who are going to be pushing both sides.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is actually the millage for the middle school.
Or middle school, excuse me.
Yeah, 97.
Oh.
Yeah, a 30-year bond that has been refinanced and grouped with some other things so that it's expiring at one time. Right, so it is a new tax, but it is hopefully going to be easier for a taxpayer to absorb because your tax bill won't change.
Right.
It would have gone down, you're right, Bob, but this way we get another 3 years of operating without adding to your tax bill. The other point I think is going to be really important that we help people understand is that time is money. And so if we don't pass this in the fall, we need to come back to the community for a higher amount of millage in the spring. So this is a great opportunity to lock in a low rate and give the district everything that it needs to operate for the next 3 years. But if we wait, unfortunately, it's going to be a bigger pill to swallow. It'll probably be in the range of 7.9 mils in the spring.
Right. Yeah, because, think back to our meeting in February before all of this happened, and I told you that the need was 7.9. That's still real. That wasn't, that hasn't changed. The need has not changed. Just how we're getting to it, how we're responding to it's different. Because we don't think that we can raise that much millage, we have to cut costs instead. The need is still there.
Yeah, the trade-off is you've made 950,000 in cuts, or will make, and it's 3 years instead of 4 years that the 7.9 would have bought us.
Right.
I think it's making the best out of a not so great situation.
Any other comments on the game plan at this juncture for the levy? Okay, let's move on, Ashley.
Well, we kind of combined items 4 and 5. So really that's all we have, because we've covered everything on the agenda, unless anyone has any additional questions or topics that they'd like to discuss.
I saw you attach the financial report as well. If anybody had any questions or thoughts on that, the monthly financials.
I did. I can certainly go through those if you'd like, but I don't know that covering a monthly financial when we've covered the big picture is worth everybody's time.
I just want to take a minute here to be a cheerleader and just say I'm amazed and so proud of how everybody on the board and our executive team, our administrative team, have been dealing with such an amazingly stressful time. And I mean, I know as parents and as community members, we all feel the stress in so many different ways, and we're all experiencing it. And you're all just taking on so much responsibility for the things that we all, of course, are terrified or worried about or excited about for our children and the whole community's children. And I hope you know, I'm sure you do, but I hope you know that you are just amazing captains of the ship right now. And we're also grateful to have such steady, thoughtful, compassionate, caring, community-minded leaders in the executive team.
I agree with all of that, and I would only add that I've heard a number of very positive comments about the transparency of the back to school and all of the other issues. So Bob, you and your team and the board are really to be commended on that as well.
Did you see the editorial in the Chagrin Valley Times about that?
I did not.
If you look where they have the editorials in the left section, there was a article about how everyone should be modeling what Chagrin's doing, in essence, because you have been very transparent. So just that could be where some of it's coming from, but it was a nice article about the fact that now every school needs to be doing what Chagrin's doing. It's kind of, that's what I interpreted to say. So I might be biased, but that was my interpretation.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, we've had a lot of success in this, environment, and a lot of it's due to the staff that picked up the ball right away in March, and frontline and from teachers to, custodial to bus driver. I mean, it's been an amazing effort. So I'm really proud of the team across the board, and I appreciate your kind words.
So I want to say a little bit about how levies work. I think some of you have worked on levies and some of you haven't. Once the board passes the resolutions that are necessary to put it on the ballot, we in the administration are really precluded from promoting a yes vote on the levy. We can certainly provide information, and we will be preparing a lot of financial information to answer anyone's questions or back up the circumstances that we're in. But it really gets turned over to a levy committee that's headed with community volunteers and helps get that message out. Back to the support pieces though, one of the things that we could spend a few minutes now talking about are questions that you think we should be able to answer and we should be expecting to come from the community, especially financial questions. Bob, I think you pointed out a good nuance to this, that, we certainly want to be very transparent that the reason this is a no tax increase is that something is falling off and we're replacing it with the exact same millage. So I guess if you guys have a few more minutes, why don't we do that? Anything that comes to mind or you have heard already, or you would ask yourself if you were questioning the need for a 3.8 mill levy this fall.
I think it isn't, it's meaningful that this is something that is from a long time ago. So this is relatively embedded revenue that didn't just come on a little while ago, in a way. And so I think that message would be useful. I think also letting people know what the consequences are on some levels. You know, it's like we're already to do it at this level, we have to make some relatively significant cuts, which people may or may not be okay with as it is. And if we, you know, if we don't do them, or if we don't do this, the cuts will be worse.
I mean,
You don't want to
I
make it a
don't
threat,
really,
though.
I mean, I really don't, I think it's a pretty good message to deliver. You're replacing a tax, but I mean, at the end of the day, the state funding's gone down 6%. We've cut 3% of our total expenditures. I mean, and again, it's not a tax increase. I think which is why the board landed on that number. It's a pretty good message to deliver.
So, Catherine, a question I've been trying to answer is, or just I think that's going to come up is, how come you couldn't cut $1 million 2 years ago from the budget? Something like that. So like, if you just did it now, like, so having answers to that might be useful. In general, to me, we're getting more practical and less strategic. We don't have a lot of strategic things going on right now. So that's a high level answer to that, but.
I think I mean, the answer to that lies in we experienced some of the savings due to COVID. I mean, there's a reality there. You know, we made an effort and we still have kept our promise to increase our PI, but we've backed off some there. And then, you know, we've always looked at attrition, but I would say we've looked at attrition more aggressively. Not that it has impacted offering of programs, but certainly has impacted class size to some extent. So there are some gives here, I think, from an educational perspective that we have to be upfront with. Certainly, you know, I was going to say pay to participate, or the copay concept. That's new and will be uncomfortable for some. But they're measures that have always been on our radar, but we've just made the decision with the economy that we need to figure as much of it out as we can, being more strategic and thoughtful, and move down, you know, paths that maybe before we, you know, decided weren't appropriate. But there, you know, the dynamics of what has played out with COVID and timing and state funding didn't allow us the opportunity to go to the community and say, here's all of what's going to be cut and or added if you say no. We had to do some of that on the fly in the front end, and you know, that's just the reality of the situation.
I think that, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it will be helpful, as we often do with any supporting information for levy campaigns, is talk about what we've done since the last levy. And, you know, we made some really incredible strides this year with yours and Ashley's guidance, but we've made cuts every year since the last levy. We're always seeking cost savings and efficiencies. I think the difference to me is that due to the economic environment, we are pushing the envelope a little bit further than we maybe even feel totally comfortable doing. You know, we're pushing it a little bit further to achieve these extra cuts. But the answer, Greg, is that we could give a list of what we've saved over the last 10 years. It's not like we just started this year and looking for, I know that's not what you were saying, but helping people understand that we're always looking for cost efficiencies. And
but I'm not muted. Okay. I was thinking also it leads into the question is we can't cut anymore. Like we've gone down also to the, like, if we cut more, we're really affecting programming.
Well, yeah, and just underscoring, I think what Bob and Ashley are always reminding us, that it's a people business, and to achieve real savings, you start to get into cutting personnel, and that starts to affect students and our ability to deliver the educational experience that our community has come to expect. So I think we can underscore that. I will say I think it can be detrimental to levy campaigns to get too negative about specifics. Like if you don't vote yes, these are the things that you're going to feel the pain, and I don't think we need to do that. But I think we can certainly remind our community that we've been fiscally responsible all along the way. We've really pushed this as far as we can. We're coming to them with the lowest millage that we really think that we can absorb, and we need their support at this point. Or we start to turn that corner to, unfortunately, affecting the type of education that we can deliver potentially.
Greg, I think your question is a terrific question, and I think that what I heard earlier were these are the cuts that will, if we make greater cuts, we will impact the quality of our educational opportunity. So I think it's a ticklish question how to say we really haven't cut so that the students, I mean, clearly if we make cuts, there is an impact. Is it how big an impact it is an interesting question that I think we have to address.
Right.
Well, and I don't get me wrong, we didn't run through all of these cuts, and certainly part of a levy conversation would include maybe a little more depth. There are things in here that are going to impact this, how we serve. I mean, we have tech support specialists that were there to, help students and help staff that we cut. We have community relations folks that we cut. It's not like those people weren't doing service for kids and for parents. It's just we feel like the reality of our situation is right now we had to, absorb some of those duties, but it's not like they were so soft that there is no impact here. You can't cut $600,000 from a budget of our size and not see some impact in terms of services. So we certainly can, talk through that as well.
I think you're cutting $950.
So just to clarify, board members are not allowed to participate in the levy committee. Are committee members that are not on the board generally allowed to? Looks like
and actually, I'm sure Mary Kay will want to weigh in on this too, because she's been on so many levy committees. But so the board has to be careful, and the administration. We do have two board members who are the liaisons to the levy committee, and that's Greg and Mary Kay. And they are allowed to support. They can be at a coffee, for example, and answer questions, and they can support. But because of our position in the district, we're really not supposed to be telling a voter how to vote, that we want you to vote yes for this levy. We can explain district finances and cuts and how we reach this millage amount, but we can't cross over to the vote yes terminology, if that makes sense. So, and there may be other board members who will choose to be involved. Obviously, it's really important to us that everybody understands the need and the timing, for this levy. Yes, board committee members can participate on levy committees. And we would encourage all of you, if you're able to do so. In fact, I would just direct you to talk with Bob afterward if that's something you're interested in learning a little bit more about. He can give you some background information and next steps. The other thing that's really valuable is you guys have firsthand knowledge of how we've grappled with these decisions and where some of these, some of the pros and cons and where some of these things came from. So that's helpful as well, just as you're talking to people and sharing, what about what the district has grappled with is also very helpful.
Yeah, and just to answer the question for staff members, we can participate. We cannot participate on our district time. So I can respond to public records requests during my day because that's part of my job. I can't help with, preparing things for the levy committee during my day. I can do that on my own time if I choose to, as Ashley, but not as the district treasurer.
It certainly gets convoluted. I mean, you will see things come out from me and from Ashley and I that are information related to the levy. It's not like we can't share the information, but we can't, one, share it in a way that can be appeared that we're manipulating. Obviously, we never do that. And two, it can't end with, this is why you need to vote a certain way. It's like we want to bring in for every voter to make whatever decision they need to and make sure we're transparent with information. So it's not like we can't share things from the district level. It's just that, I guess, that final step of saying, we need you to vote X way. We can't do that.
See, another thing, as long as we're on the topic of levy and filling positions in the levy committee, I will bring it up, and the board knows this, that I was a treasurer for the last levy committee. So we do need to find another financial people on this call, and we do need to find a treasurer for this upcoming levy as well. It's not a large time consuming job. You can call me about it later if you want to talk about it, but if anybody's interested in that role specifically, we can talk about that.
And that was before Phil was elected to the board, that he served in that capacity, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
So we usually have pretty robust levy committees with 2 or 3 chair people. John can speak to that. He's been a chairperson, I think, 3 times. And then it's a tiered, all the way down to, people who might be taking on several neighborhoods to make sure the information gets out in several neighborhoods. So there can be, and we have had 100, 150 people all told together pulling for the levy. John, do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a levy chairperson? Are you frozen? Oh, you're frozen. You might need to go out and come back in again.
Can you hear me or you can't hear me?
Now I can. Now I can.
Yeah, I was co-chair one time, and I've been 2 other times in other roles. Last time I was in charge of the fellow geriatrics, so that was my role. It is fairly time consuming to be a co-chair, but it is a labor of love. We had a number of neighborhood meetings. Dr. Hunt was very effective. We had, in our neighborhood, that Bob and I live in the same neighborhood, we have 37 units. And we've had about 30 people, 35 people in level. And Bob made a very clear, concise description of the need. And we focused on we had meetings at the Historical Society. So, and we had meetings in other people's living rooms. We've always done that, going back to my first levy, 2003, when Dave Axner was still the superintendent. We asked 3 or 4, I asked 3 or 4 different neighborhood leaders to host information sessions in their homes. So it is a lot of work, but the stakes are very high. So it was a good experience.
Lose him again?
I think John's frozen again. I'll just want to add one thing, just with being the year 2020 and, things have changed. We do expect there to be a lot of absentee ballots this time. In fact, it may be an absentee ballot election. So the levy committee really needs to be ready with their message. We used to focus on the 30 days before. We're going to have to be ready sooner than that this year. I'm hearing that we really want to do is have people that will watch the Board of Elections. You can download the list of who requested the absentee ballot and know what date their absentee ballot gets mailed, and you want to mail them a piece of literature either like that next day so that they have your literature in hand when they get their ballot. So that's something we really would want to push this year. So having the literature ready and having people that are going to like put literature and write an address on an envelope and put it in the mail. So that's something that's going to be more important this year than in the past.
And I hate to leave you guys early, but I do have a bunch of little Cub Scouts waiting for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we're wrapping up.
Yes.
Just going to add to Mary Kay. So early voting begins October 6th. So the goal for the levy committee would be that the vast majority of our community understands the ask, why, how their taxes aren't going to be going up, and would be, supportive as of October 6th. So it's a lot to do in a short time frame to make sure that information gets out. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, board members. Ashley, thank you for running a great meeting. I think we can wrap it up.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Who was that?
Or
That
motion.
was Emily.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good
Thanks.
evening.
Bye
You too.
bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.